Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're doing really, really well, and February is off to a great start for you. I've been meaning to do this video for a while, actually, a few months since before Christmas, but it's just the way life goes, I suppose. My schedule got in the way, but here I am, and hopefully you find it helpful. Hopefully, at least one of you finds it helpful because, in a lot of the work I do and the content I put out, I really believe that if I can impact or help just one person, then I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So, in this podcast episode, we're going to look at 50 symptoms plus one of perimenopause. So, that plus one is quite interesting. So, firstly, what is perimenopause? Well, perimenopause is that transitional time before your last period. So basically, perimenopause can last anywhere from a few months to 10 plus years. It can last quite a while. But perimenopause is really where women start to feel like things are changing in their body. Things are starting to act a bit wonky. My hormones are wonky. They're out of balance. I don't feel like myself. Just things start to change, and it can be just how you feel in yourself, or it could be more kind of in your face, like cycle changes and hot flashes and night sweats. And we're going to get into all those symptoms. But you can really start to feel like you're going insane during perimenopause. My followers and my friends, I think most people know I'm like the biggest Alice in Wonderland fan, and sometimes I feel like I have fallen down that rabbit hole. I'm like, oh my God, everything's crazy. I think I'm going crazy. So, and that can in itself be a symptom of perimenopause. Now, when does perimenopause start? Generally, we used to say perimenopause would start around the mid 40s and usually would hit its peak, or menopause, which is one day, would arrive around 50, 52. Now, it's important to understand that menopause is only one day. All the crazy symptoms and all the years before that, that's all perimenopause. So we consider menopause to be that one day after 12 months of no bleed. So you've gone 12 months without a period, and then menopause is that one day, 12 months later, and then the following day is postmenopause. So you're postmenopausal at that stage. And surprisingly enough, not a lot of women understand that. They think menopause is a phase in itself, and I suppose it could be, but it's a one day phase. So we used to believe that perimenopause would start mid 40s, but we're seeing it earlier and earlier now. And some of the literature even directs us towards mid 20s. Women are starting to experience perimenopause symptoms in their mid 20s. There's a lot to be considered here. We're living in the most stressful times ever. We're more stressed than we've ever been. We've got so many endocrine disruptors everywhere. Like, it's unavoidable in our air, in our water, in our food packaging, self-care products, our clothes. We've got fire retardants in our sofas, beds, carpets, laminate flooring. You can't step outside the house or go for a cup of coffee without getting exposed to some sort of endocrine disruptor. And that's why I always say all you can do is stack conditions in your favor. My friend Catherine loves to hear me say that because like there's no real cure. There's no real fix. All you can do is stack conditions in your favor and hope for the best, really. Because the odds are against us now. But regardless, we are seeing women in their mid-20s are experiencing perimenopausal symptoms now. And more commonly then, as women are in their mid-30s, even early 30s. And if you were to ask me, when I think perimenopause starts or women start experiencing perimenopause, I would say mid 30s. From the age of 35 on, that's where most women I speak to, and I speak to a lot, start to experience some sort of perimenopause symptoms. And I know a lot of other health practitioners and hormone specialists and doctors would agree with me. Mid 30s seems to be the new age for perimenopause to really kick in. And you think of women in their 30s, most women are stressed up to their eyeballs. They're raising a family, they're trying to excel at their career, they're building a business, trying to maintain a home, trying to take care of themselves. Like, it's a lot. And then you throw in like social media and other considerations, it's a lot. So the women I speak to, most women are experiencing some sort of perimenopause symptoms. Um, Usually around mid 30s. Like, it's pretty common now. So what is the perimenopause? Well, it is that transitional phase leading up to that one day of menopause where the ovaries start to gradually produce less hormones. And that's primarily going to be progesterone and even testosterone to an extent. Yes, we do produce a little less estrogen, but in the grand scheme of things, estrogen is its highest in a woman's body during her perimenopausal years, and there's many reasons for this. Like I said, external endocrine disruptors, body fat is a huge consideration. So when we're looking at perimenopause and perimenopause symptoms, we're usually seeing they're caused more so by the decline in progesterone and testosterone and even DHEA and even pregnenolone to an extent. But primarily, we're seeing these symptoms that I'm going to go through. It is due to low progesterone and testosterone. I'll mention a few regarding estrogen. So it typically starts in the 40s, but can be earlier, so don't be surprised, and lasts until that one day of menopause. In some women, it can be a few months. In some women, it can be over 10 years. The average is 4 to 8 years, which is kind of a big average, so not very comforting there. But during this time, these hormonal fluctuations, they cause a wide range of physical and emotional and cognitive or brain symptoms. And it is important to note, I'll just add this in here for those of you that are curious. In regards to progesterone, the majority of our progesterone does get made in the ovaries, but we can make some in the adrenals, so they can pick up a bit of the slack, and our brain can make a little bit progesterone as well. But then you consider, well, if I'm always stressed, then how the hell is my adrenals making any progesterone? Because I'm just constantly stressed, and we know that progesterone is directly influenced by stress. And there's a debate going on now in the health and science world whether or not the pregnenolone slash progesterone steal is even real. We're not quite sure 100% what that pathway is, but we do know stress directly influences progesterone. So, and that's where a lot of us women are seeing those symptoms. So let's get into the symptoms. 50 symptoms of perimenopause. Well, number one, we've got those period changes, irregular periods, shorter, longer, heavier, lighter, whatever it is, some sort of period changes. And it's important to note here that with number one and number two is skipped periods. These cycle changes, they're usually the latter end of perimenopause symptoms. Like, they're usually what you're going to experience more towards the end of your perimenopause fun. They're not something that women primarily experience in early menopause. They're more late perimenopause. So these cycle changes where you can start bleeding very, very heavy, or you can start skipping periods, and ovulation changes. But that's important to note, because I think a lot of women believe I'm only in perimenopause if I have changes in my cycle, and that's not true. So number three is hot flashes. So just sudden heat sensations. Oh my God, did someone turn on the heating, open a window, I'm feeling warm. And number four is night sweats. So these both kind of go hand in hand. Night sweats, you're going to wake up soaking wet, especially in between the creases, elbows, knees, around the collarbone, breasts. Um, Most women are going to experience some sort of hot flash or night sweat at some stage. It's important to note that there's a huge connection between adrenaline, which is our primary stress hormone, and blood sugar or insulin changes. Like, they play a huge part in hot flashes and night sweats. So that's important. Pay attention to your stress, pay attention to your nutrition. But I think most women are going to experience a hot flash or a night sweat at least once. Number 5 is chills, and chills could be after a hot flash or a night sweat as your body tries to cool down and you're left with some moisture on the skin. It is going to make you chilly, or it could be because thyroid function slows down during perimenopause. Number 6, sleep disturbances. I think nearly every woman in perimenopause is going to experience some sort of sleep disturbance, whether or not that's insomnia, issues falling asleep, tossing and turning all night. I'm a light sleeper, just that kind of thing. And that goes hand in hand with number 7, which would be fatigue. Of course, if you're not sleeping, you're going to be fatigued. And then if there is low thyroid function, that's going to contribute to your fatigue as well. But sleep disturbances, like, really, really, really common. There could be many reasons for that. But if you've never had sleep issues, don't be surprised if it starts during perimenopause. Then we've got mood swings, number 8. Yep, enough said. Been there doing that. Then number 9, increased anxiety. Number 10, depression or low mood, or what I'll say to my clients is that feeling of malaise, like just feeling down, like there's no joy in your life. You struggle to find joy in anything or have that kind of oomph, that get up and go. So malaise is a big one that I see in my clients. Then you've got number 11, irritability. Number 12 is brain fog. So that kind of difficulty focusing, that's a big one. GABA can be really helpful for that. And that goes hand in hand with number 13, which would be memory issues or memory recall, forgetfulness. Why did I walk into the kitchen? Why am I putting the dishwasher in the fridge? Like, where's my keys? Where's my glass? All that sort of stuff. So that's really common, those memory issues. And part of that would be attributed to, if you're not sleeping, you're going to have a lot of inflammation in the brain and thus brain fog. And REM sleep is where we do consolidate everything we've learned and our memories. So if you're not getting into REM sleep, that is going to be a factor. But there's a hormonal factor as well in memory issues. Number 14, vaginal dryness. Not every woman will experience vaginal dryness. What I've noticed in my clients in my practice is that the women who have lower amounts of body fat, they tend to have issues with vaginal dryness more, which would make sense because body fat makes its own estrogen. And if you don't have enough body fat, the estrogen's going to drop too. And estrogen is involved in that vaginal tissue. So in this sense, and even in number 15, which is next, which is painful intercourse, vaginal dryness, if the vagina is always dry, it's going to be like sandpaper rubbing, and it even hurts some women to sit down. Then, of course, if this keeps happening, that tissue is going to wear down and it's going to become thinner and thinner and thinner. So then we've got the painful intercourse because everything is so thin, the nerves get more exposed. It's very, very painful. Like, I have a client and her husband, they've not had intercourse in 10 years because it's so painful. Like, this is a real thing. In this case, estrogen can be beneficial, and I will use Platt Wellness Bioidentical Estriol, Estriol, so not estradiol, Estriol. Estriol is the safest of the estrogens, and that can be really helpful. You do have to be careful with some other considerations, especially if there's chronic yeast infections, but I'll also use pure organic coconut oil, really, really helpful for vaginal dryness, and even yeast. But coconut oil contains vitamin E. Vitamin E is great for skin integrity and regeneration. Coconut oil also has some steroid hormones in it, so they can also help with tissue health and even blood flow. Then we've got the antifungal, antimicrobial aspect of coconut oil, so it's really, really good. And I would use that as a natural lubricant as well. In some people, works great. Some people need more, and that's where we would use that estrogen cream too. Then we've got number 16, decreased libido, sex drive. Well, that would make sense for many reasons. One, if you have a lot of vaginal dryness and you get a lot of pain during intercourse, of course you're not going to do it. And I would expect every man to understand that. Like, no, it hurts. I'm not doing that. Which is, it's a tough situation to be in. Then if you have like a lot of stress and even low thyroid function, so your blood flow and circulation around the reproductive organs is lower. And stress alone, like if you're stressed, intercourse is the last thing you want to do. Like, I think most women would agree, if they had to pick between a glass of wine and intercourse, they're going to pick the wine. But there's several reasons why decreased libido happens, and that lower progesterone and testosterone during perimenopause plays an important part as well. Then we've got 17 is urinary urgency and needing to pee a lot more often. So not full on incontinence, but feeling like you're not fully emptied out and you need to go more often. That can be for multiple reasons. Chronic urination does have a direct connection to high adrenaline and the stress response, especially nocturnal urination. But that and number 18, chronic urinary tract infections, they can go hand in hand. There's multiple reasons for this. During perimenopause, we've got the changes in the hormones. We know that progesterone, testosterone are immune supporting and very important for our good microbiota. But also, urinary tract infections are primarily formed through an abundance of E. coli. E. coli like to feed on estrogen. So if there's a lot more estrogen there, then you're going to be more prone to a UTI flare. We also then have the changes in not only blood flow, but muscle integrity around the pelvic area and even around the vagina can get a lot weaker. So there's a lot of considerations when it comes to these. And number 19, breast tenderness. Number 20, weight gain, especially around the abdomen. Couple of reasons for this. If you've got low progesterone is prothyroid, whereas estrogen is anti-thyroid. So if you're tanking in your progesterone, but you've still got loads of estrogen, well, that estrogen's directly affecting the thyroid along with everything else, like the stress, the poor sleep, the systemic inflammation, poor nutrition as well, because it's going to be real hard to eat healthy if you're not sleeping and you're stressed. So that's going to change thyroid function, and that in itself can increase weight gain. But also, I used to follow an Australian practitioner. He was a naturopath. He was hilarious. And I remember him saying at one stage, your butt becomes your belly. So it's like your butt relocates to your belly. During perimenopause, women lose their butt and they gain a belly, which it sounds like a nightmare. So it is a consideration. Then we've got the changes in blood sugars and insulin as well. So fatigue, if you're exhausted, you're not going to be going for a walk or exercise. So there's a lot to consider, but weight gain is a symptom. Then we've got number 21, bloating. Number 22, increased cravings for sugar or carbs. Well, yeah, you're stressed, you're fatigued. Of course you want sugar. Then we've got 23 and 24. So 23 would be joint pain and stiffness. 24 would be muscle aches. These two, yes, there's a consideration around systemic inflammation because you're not sleeping and maybe you're making some poor food choices. But what I see with these in my clients is that those women, again, who have lower estrogen because they've low body fat, they seem to be more prone to the joint aches and pains and stiffness, and they will see relief with bioidentical estrogen there. Now, it is individual. You never ever know what way a woman is going to respond to, especially estrogen. But in my practice, I have seen a lot of women find relief from their aches and pains using bioidentical estrogen. Then, number 25 is chronic headaches and migraines, especially if you're still cycling those few days before day one of your bleed when estrogen is going haywire. Usually, there's estrogen dominance here, and you need high doses of progesterone would be helpful. Then we have 26, 27, 28 go hand in hand. So, thinning hair or hair loss, dry skin, brittle nails. Well, these three are all primary symptoms of hypothyroidism. So, circling back to what I was saying, like hypothyroidism, if you've never had it before and all of a sudden you develop it in perimenopause, don't be surprised. It's really, really common because, again, if your progesterone tanks and progesterone is pro-thyroid, you've got lots of systemic inflammation. You're not sleeping, you're making poor food choices, you're not exercising, and now you've got an abundance of estrogen. Thyroid is going to take a hit, and we can see these symptoms start to occur. And I'm not saying it's all thyroid. There can be an influence of estrogen by itself, but if you connect the dots, it starts to make sense. 29, acne or breakouts. You know, in traditional Chinese medicine, they consider perimenopause to be your second puberty. So don't be surprised if you start getting those pimples again that you had when you were a teenager. It's not uncommon. Number 30, changes in body odor. 31, tingling sensations, also known as paresthesia. Then 32, dizziness and or vertigo. Many reasons for that. Dehydration, low electrolytes, systemic inflammation, loss of sleep, changes in the microbiome because of hormonal changes, but that can be quite common. Number 33 is heart palpitations, or I'll say to my clients, do you ever notice your eyelid twitches? Like it'll twitch and you think other people can see it, but they can't, it's just you. So that, including heart palpitations, is a stress response, usually fixed by magnesium and a good night's sleep and some good quality electrolytes / hydration. But because of the changes in the hormones, and we're not just talking about the sex hormones, we're talking about adrenaline, cortisol, ACTH, parathyroid, leptin, ghrelin, our hunger and satiety hormones, insulin. We're talking about all the hormones. They all play a part in perimenopause. It's not just, and thyroid hormones, it's not just the sex hormones that change in perimenopause, the whole lot. So that can really influence that stress response. Then we have 34, increased allergies or sensitivities. That can be environmental, it can be to your favorite body lotion, it can be to your cleaning products, it can be to your detergent. It could be new random sensitivities. Because, as I like to put it, the body's on fire. Everything is super sensitive, everything is inflamed. It's almost like no holds barred. Anything can happen during perimenopause. And part of this would be 35, which is the changes in digestion. Your gut health really does kind of shine when we look at either skin issues or sensitivities. So changes in digestion, really common. From mid-30s on, so from perimenopause on, it could go either way. It could be constipation, it could be diarrhea, it could be some sort of new developed irritable bowel disease. Women can get diagnosed with diverticulosis, ulcerative colitis, SIBO, like there's no holds barred when it comes to gut health during perimenopause. And then that would influence number 36, which is new or worsening food intolerances. So, not just sensitivities to external factors, but food. All of a sudden, you can develop an intolerance to eggs. Or all of a sudden, you can't tolerate your favorite chocolate. Like, it really is it is a magical wonderland. It's all up in the air during perimenopause. Number 37, gum problems. So bleeding, sensitivity in your teeth. We would be looking at the microbiome there for sure, and the gut. Systemic inflammation will increase sensitivity of the teeth, and those nerve endings will be very inflamed. Number 38, a metallic taste in the mouth. This is not super common. I have maybe 3 clients that have this. Can come back to the changes in the gut health and the microbiome and the systemic inflammation. I find if you can like reduce that inflammation, improve the stress response, just be careful with FODMAP foods. That can really make a difference. Especially like easily digestible foods in the evenings can be helpful, like soups and stews and stuff that's pre-digested. Then we've got 39, burning mouth syndrome. Again, that gut, those nerve endings, they're on fire. 40, worsened PMS symptoms. 41, heightened emotional sensitivity. Just feeling very emotional, very weepy all the time. Like, I can't do this. Like, everything's so overwhelming. Or even like just getting weepy watching random movies or clips. Like, that's happened to me. I'm like, oh my God, why am I so sensitive? So that's common. 42, increased stress levels, or I might rephrase this as decreased stress resiliency. We're not as resilient as we were in our younger years. So there's that analogy, people say like the cup, when your cup is full, generally you're burned out, you need to take a break, empty the cup, except when you come back, the cup is smaller. It's not the same size cup, it's a smaller cup. So you're less able to deal with stress. That's really common for a lot of women. I would also put some of that down to just wear and tear. You're just worn out. It's been a long 35 or 40 years. Then we have 43, the feeling of electric shocks under the skin, or even some women might just feel randomly itchy. Those nerve endings, again, they're very inflamed, they're on fire. Then we've got 44, cold hands and feet. That would circle back to the thyroid for sure. One of the primary symptoms of hypothyroidism is cold hands and feet. You've got decreased circulation. If you drop progesterone and testosterone, that's all going to slow down. Then you've got 45, changes in vision, dry eyes, difficulty focusing. This is really interesting to me. There is a huge component of inflammation and macular health. And in some people, you give them some really good EPA and DHA, a lot of vitamin D, and astaxanthin, and their macular health will just recover spectacularly. Like, it's really a game changer. But I've also noticed there's a direct connection between the adrenals and macular health. And there is literature on this because I was looking at it a few weeks ago, and basically what I kind of gleaned from it was that if a woman or even a man has had something traumatic happen in their younger life, in their younger years, that stress response from the adrenals directly targets the eyes. Really interesting. And this is, in my experience, in my practice, common in my clients who have had like laser therapy and stuff on their eyes, where their eyes had gotten so degraded and broken down. There's usually some big stress response or trauma that happened in previous years that crushed the adrenals. So that was really interesting. Then we've got 46, increased risk of osteoporosis or bone thinning. A lot of people think this is because estrogen declines. It doesn't. I think I mentioned earlier, women have their highest levels of estrogen during their perimenopause years. What we actually see is that high estrogen, when it's not being offset by progesterone, it then stimulates prolactin. That high prolactin is a stress hormone that signals to ACTH, and then that signals to the body to start leaching calcium from the bones and breaking down the bones. And that's where it would seem that high estrogen is more of a factor to osteoporosis and even rheumatoid arthritis. I posted some research on this. It's on my Instagram under one of the highlights. You can check out. I try to post as much of the supporting studies and literature as I can. Actually, I think there's a post or two posts on estrogen and bone health, so check that out. So what we would then attribute that to is, well, it's the progesterone. The progesterone is so low that it's not blocking the stress hormones and blocking the damaging effect of the estrogen. 47, restless leg syndrome. There's a huge connection to restless leg syndrome and stress and magnesium, because magnesium is one of our primary stress support tools that we would use. And I was also looking at research on this a couple of weeks ago, and it would seem that people that have restless leg syndrome, they need a lot of magnesium, like multiple times across the day, not just some magnesium before bed. And so, yeah, changes in hormones, stress response, restless leg syndrome. 48, worsened allergy symptoms. So that can go back to increased food intolerances and new sensitivities, worsened allergies. Again, looking at the gut, looking at the microbiome. 49, more frequent yeast infections. That would go hand in hand with the chronic UTIs that I mentioned earlier. Yeast loves estrogen, absolutely loves it. Really common for a woman on her period or straight after her period to get a yeast infection, because yeast feeds off estrogen. So generally, if there's more estrogen, there's going to be more yeast infections. And then number 50, loss of motivation or drive. Really common for a woman as she moves through perimenopause to almost feel lost. Am I any good at what I'm doing? What do I want to do? Do I enjoy my job? Really common for women to just leave their job in perimenopause and start something new. There seems to be a lot less tolerance for BS during perimenopause. Now, not everyone will experience all these symptoms. Like I mentioned, it varies. There's a lot of bioindividualities. There's considerations of familial traits, ancestry, external influences. There's a whole lot, lifestyle factors. There's a lot to be considered when perimenopause symptoms are experienced. But there is one more that I felt was notable. This had been posted in my Facebook group a couple of weeks ago by a woman, and then I didn't pay too much attention to it, and then it popped up a few more times, and that is literally called phantom smells. Now, there is a more scientific word called phantosmia. Most people don't say that. They'll just say phantom smells. They're smelling stuff that other people are not smelling. Do you smell that burning? No. And thus you feel like you're crazy. But this is common. And the literature seems to point towards declining estrogen and how it influences the brain function and the areas responsible for processing smells. I think there's a big nutrition factor here as well. If you're sleep deprived and you've got a lot of stress, fatigue, maybe not making the best nutrition choices, because we know that nutrition, and we saw this during COVID, if there were certain nutritional deficiencies like magnesium and zinc, people were losing their sense of smell and taste. There's also the nervous system, so changes in the nerve sensitivity can cause unusual sensory perceptions, like smelling stuff that's not there. That would go back to managing stress, keeping the inflammation low. Um, then, of course, there's that vaginal dryness, but obviously your vagina is not smelling anything, hopefully. Um, that tissue, though, vaginal tissue is the same tissue that's in our sinuses and our mucous membranes. If that tissue starts to regress and change and become more inflamed and dry, then that can lead to the nasal passages sometimes either causing or picking up weird smells. So, what are these smells? Like I said, um, burning, like is something burning, like smoke or toast or rubber. I actually got this smell 3 mornings last week starting my car. And luckily enough, I'm not going crazy because my son smelt it as well. So I was like, phew. It could be rotten or decaying odors, chemical or metallic scents. Some people, especially if there's changes in the blood sugars and insulin, they're going to get sweeter, maybe perfumey smells. So, an interesting symptom that not everyone experiences, but if you do and it continues to either persist or get worse and worse, then maybe speak to your doctor about it. So that is not the definite list of perimenopause symptoms. It's a lot. I think they're the more common ones, but hopefully you found them helpful. Let me know in the comments. Do you experience any of these? Have you? Are you excited to experience any of these? So I hope this podcast episode was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. You can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram or my website, all the same name, Shemaine's Model Health, and I will be happy to respond. Okay, have a great day and take care, everyone. Bye.